How's it going, everybody? Ragnaroth here. So Resident Evil Remake is probably about maybe about a half a year away, if that, at the time of this. And, we had the Resident Evil showcase back in around Halloween. And I kind of wanted to talk more about the game, aside from, doing reaction videos and all that. Now, all of I'm going to call them the RE Engine Resident Evil games. Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 3 Remake, Resident Evil 8, and now Resident Evil 4 Remake are kind of off in this category, all made under the RE engine. And I have basically enjoyed all the ones that are released so far. My biggest gripe that I've had with, I guess more so we'll go with the remakes, because, they were, Resident Evil 7 and 8 Resident Evil never existed before then. You can't really say they cut anything out. Great as they are, especially Resident Evil 2 Remake, they're known for cutting things out from the original. Especially the Resident Evil 3 Remake, that is a lot more notorious than the Resident Evil 2 Remake, I would say. I think most of us will basically agree with there. And I figured I would like to do these kind of video segments where I could talk about different aspects of the game, and if I think they're going to make the cut or not, basically if they'll be in the game or not, and what I think the likelihood of them coming back, what I think they can maybe change, things like that. Now, I'm really not worried about the graphics, the gameplay. I'm especially not worried about the gameplay after the showcase. I'm definitely not worried there. Story, not really. Tone, maybe, but that probably was more... It's hard for me to say there, because on one hand, I like the idea of the game being scarier and darker, but on the other hand, I do kind of like that, cheesy tone of the original Resident Evil 4, but it seems like we are maybe getting the best of both worlds from what we've seen and heard so far. But yes, it's really just content. That's what I'm mainly worried about, it coming back or not. And there's a lot of different things they could cut. I'm going to try to talk about a different aspect of the game each video. For the first one, I kind of figured to talk about something very more kind of clear cut that I don't really think there's much to say about. And that's mainly weapons, and I'm going to maybe touch upon the melee attacks as well. Now, weapons, I'm not too concerned here. I'm really not that concerned, especially kind of after how much Resident Evil 8 had. Resident Evil 8 had a lot more weapons than I thought they would. And I think Resident Evil 2 and 3 Remake have been pretty good with keeping the weapons from the original. But Resident Evil 4 does have a lot of guns. It has about 18 if you count at least the rocket launcher or the infinite rocket launcher. It has 19, I guess, if you want to count the knife, especially because the knife is going to have its own inventory slot now. Not really counting the disposables like grenades. So it is just a lot of weapons. That's a lot. Definitely more than Resident Evil 8 had. So that's, I guess, maybe the only reason I'd be at all worried. However, it's not like it's a Devil May Cry or Bayonetta game where it's like every weapon is their own moveset. I guess you just kind of have the model, the animation that when it fires, the sound, I guess sort of the stats or effect when it kind of hits an enemy. Obviously, there's still stuff involved. I'm not saying that, but it's not as involved as, say, like a full-on moveset or something like that. Not to mention, but I think they can reuse a lot of assets. They can probably work from stuff from Resident Evil 8 and probably even as well Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 3 as well. Now, I would say the only weapons I am remotely concerned about are the Killer 7, the PRL 412, and Chicago Typewriter. And honestly, the Killer 7, I'm really not concerned about making the cut. I'm more so concerned if they're going to change the name or not. Because for those that don't know, it's named after another game that Capcom did not develop, but they own the rights to. It's called Killer 7. Probably a game, probably one of my favorite video games ever, to be honest. Basically, Resident Evil 4 and Killer 7 were both being developed, or at least helped out with by Shinji Mikami, and I guess in honor of that, they wanted to name a gun in this after the game Killer 7. I think it's supposed to be the character Kaede's gun, even though it's more of a Magnum it's more of a standard Magnum in Resident Evil 4, and then in Killer 7, it's more of, I guess, kind of a pistol, sort of a scope. I think it was a pretty powerful pistol, so maybe that was a Magnum with a scope as well. Yeah, basically Resident Evil 4 and Killer 7 were kind of part of Capcom's 5 lineup, basically 5 games that, I think it was 5, that were supposed to kind of sort of help out the GameCube library with third-party games, essentially. Man, if only they make kind of like that for the Switch, huh? But even though Capcom still owns their right to this game, I don't know, it just seems like they would maybe change the name of it. as lame as I think, obviously I'd rather the gun be in than the name, than if we just had to get the name changed. Just because they seem to really ignore kind of the more older, obscure things that are associated with them. I mean, hell, that dog that you save in Resident Evil 4 that helps you out against the El Gigante boss fight that is now apparently dead in the remake, at least so we think. Now, apparently, that was apparently based off a game called Haunting Ground. It was an old Capcom game, a very obscure game, and I guess maybe because that game is not relevant anymore, that's one reason at least. Maybe they killed the dog off. I don't know. That's, I think, the worst I could see happening with the Killer 7. Now, the PRL, the only reason I can maybe see them take that out is because it wasn't in the original Resident Evil 4. It was something added in the PS2 port and then ports going forward. And I guess just because it's kind of a more exotic weapon. Granted, it is a reward for beating professional difficulty, so that would be kind of stupid if they took out that for that. Not to mention, but I mean, if I remember correctly, Resident Evil 8 has literally a lightsaber. And not to mention, it's literally like Darth Maul's lightsaber. So I think if they're going to have a weapon like that in Resident Evil 8, a game that's much more serious and probably and arguably less action-packed, I'm sure they would still keep this. Now, Chicago Typewriter, I think it will be in. I think at worst, though, that maybe they would take out that cool animation that Leon can do when he's wearing that with the gangster outfit. Partially because, well, first of all, the gangster outfit has to be in make it back in the first place. And I just don't know. It's just one of those, like, extra things that I just don't know if they would go through the trouble of adding back. I think the gun will probably be fine, though. So, yeah, I'm pretty confident on that, especially because we've already seen some make a return from what we've seen with the Merchant, and we've seen Lewis with the Red 9, at least. Now, I'm going to touch upon the melee attacks a little bit. Now, by melee attacks, what I mean is these are the attacks that Leon can do, or I guess any character you're playing is, really. If you shoot an Ganado in, like, the head or the leg or something that kind of gets stunned, you know, like Leon does that roundhouse kick, or as I call it, the Kennedy kick. And, of course, he does the suplex, too, on I think, the church, the cult guys when you shoot him in the leg. Now, we already know that, thankfully, the kick is back. I was honestly surprised to see this come back. That seemed like something they would have taken out. I guess the suplex is a different story, though. And he really only did them against the cult guys in the castle. I forget what they were called. I forget if he did them against the kind of the I guess the mercenary guys, but I'm not too worried about the melee attacks. Like if he didn't do them in that gameplay showcase, then yes, I would be concerned. But yeah, I think this is overall a cut and dry one. I'm pretty confident that we're gonna get all the weapons back. You know, like I said, you know, there's a couple I'm a little iffy on, or if they'll maybe make some changes to them, but I think we're pretty good there. I think this is definitely something I'm not too worried about. I'm gonna try to do some more of these before the game comes out as kind of a countdown to it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you think there's any weapons that you think they might take out of the game or maybe alter heavily, definitely let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But like the video if you like it, dislike if you dislike it. Definitely consider subscribing if you like this video and some of my others as well. It would really help the channel out a lot. But as I always say, another time, another place. Keep being awesome.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?